Well, good morning. How are you all today? And welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I want to talk a little bit more about that school shooting down in Georgia and evil, the nature of evil. And I'll tell you why I say evil. I'll tell you that in a few minutes. But I'm going to come at this from a little bit different point than most people have, and probably different than what you might expect. And it's probably going to offend some people. And if it offends somebody, tough, good. They probably need to be offended. We've learned more about this, of course. The initial information is is never complete. That's the nature of information and the news business and all that. So what we know now is in just a second, this airplane is going around in just a moment. You don't need to listen to that. Okay, he's flying off into the sunset or the sunrise, actually. So what we know so far is they came out pretty quickly with the kid's name. I thought that was unusual. Colt Gray was his name. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to mention his name. He's 14 years old. Um, they immediately said they're gonna charge him as an adult. I found that a little bit unusual that they arrived at that so quickly. Um, of course, like so many of these things, right? The FBI had him on their watch list. Um, Interviewed the father and the boy. I don't know whether it was the FBI or somebody else. Doesn't matter. And they interviewed him a year ago over some problematic behavior. Determined yes, there were guns in the house, but the kid couldn't get to him. Blah 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 blah. Right? It's the same old thing. Yeah, we had this guy on our radar. Well, your radar ain't worth squat if if it doesn't help, right? It's if the pilot runs into the mountain and said, "Yeah, we had that mountain on our radar," it doesn't absolve the pilot, right? Now I know that I was in law enforcement for a long time. I understand that there's a limit to what can be done with information, and very often these people, they'll conduct their information in their interviews, and they'll write the reports, and pretty much okay, well we can't do anything about it, but we have them on our radar. Okay, so what happens is apparently the kid's he's one of these quiet ones, right? We're going to find out. Well, let me put it this way: we may not find out more. Uh, we will see what kind of story they want to feed us, and very possibly they're not going to feed us any kind of story except that he was quiet, he was this, he was that. They're not going to tell us the real reason, and I'll tell you what the real reason is in just a minute. Um, and so he left a class. He had a lot of absences. He left a class, came back, uh, to try to get into the classroom. Apparently, a girl saw that he had a gun. Now, this is just reported. It may not even be true. Okay, and wouldn't let him in, and that's when he started shooting. Good for the SROs there who stopped him. It's interesting here that he gave up very quickly, and very often these things, an active shooter, and I used to teach active shooting, shooter classes, surviving active shooters, not active shooting. Uh, I used to teach it, and very often, for the most part, these things are brought to a conclusion at first contact with resistance, whether that resistance be from law enforcement or non-law enforcement. Very often, they're stopped at the first resistance from non-law enforcement because it's not their, for the most part, it's not their their goal to survive it. You know, there's a lot of psychological problems going on here. So anyway, I made the comment yesterday. We're all the armed teachers, where that they assume responsibility for the children when they accept the children into a building that is a gun-free zone, and just somebody over on our American Reversion Patreon channel told me they live close by there, and it turns out that this is a school that allows teachers to be armed. The principal was for it, but the school administration was not for it, something like that. And also that the sheriff is for it, and has offered to, provide training and things like that. Now that brings us to the sheriff, and this is going to bring us to what my point is today. And I watched the sheriff and his statement, and he went quite a bit into the idea of evil. And he said that evil was not going to win in his county, or whatever he said. I don't know. I'm not putting the guy down. People who aren't used to speaking in public very often, and he's wound up in the emotions. I get that. But it's very easy, it's kind of like when well, it doesn't matter. I won't get into that. Evil will not triumph in our county. Love will, and all that. Well, okay. And love should, and love is a certain kind, is where we're going to go with this in a minute. But the idea that evil is not going to triumph in his county, well, it already did, So saying that is just, it's an emotional response that I understand, but it doesn't mean anything. Now, here's where I want to jump onto the evil train. Okay, and I'm going to say something much different than you think I'm going to, because it's different than most people do. I've heard a lot of people over the last few years talk about evil, 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 evil. Evilness here, evilness here. The world is full of evilness. Evilness isn't even a real word, but that's, it's a made-up word. Evil is the word, okay? But people, it's become part of the vernacular. Yeah, the world is full of evil. Always has been. Okay? It always has been. We know who the father of evil is. Now, some of us have dealt with real evil. I mean real evil, and most people haven't. Most people don't have a clue as to what real, they've never looked into the eyes of real evil. They have this tendency to think that anything bad that happens is evil. Well, you can certainly say that it stems from evil at one point on the continuum, but that act is not necessarily what they ascribe it to be. Now, I've dealt with a lot of troubled kids, and I mean, for 50 years. Okay, 50 years. I dealt with them in law enforcement. I dealt with them on all levels of the socioeconomic spectrum. I dealt with them in the ghetto. I dealt with them in the more affluent areas. I dealt with them in the small towns. And all through the years that I taught martial arts, and then all the years that I worked with the hospital system and security, I've dealt with a lot of troubled kids. I've never dealt with an evil one. Okay. Now you can say, well, there's some evil kids out there. No, there are not. Who is that guy that started Boys Town? Father somebody or other. I should have looked it up, except I didn't know I was going here with this. Father somebody started Boys Town. He had a saying, there's no such thing as a bad boy. I 100% agree with that. Every troubled kid I ever dealt with, boys or girls, I could track it right back to the parents. Right back to the parents. They're going to find something. They won't tell the story about this shooter down in Georgia, because if they tell the story, they're going to find out that it was the lack of a strong father. It was the lack of love in the family, and I mean nurturing. Oh, you're going to come out. Oh, we loved him. He loved. I ran with a pretty tough crowd when I was younger, in my teens and high school, and most of us we're some hellraisers out there, but not too many were really troubled. There were a couple who were troubled, real troubled. They were the ones who didn't have the parenting. They didn't have the parenting. It makes all the difference. This all comes back to parenting. In the many years that I was with the hospital system, now I guess when I started there, probably 15 years ago, and we hardly had any overdoses. Now, this was in a little country club hospital out in a very affluent area of this town, and that's the reason I went to work there. It was a little. I didn't never had to do anything but drink coffee and wander around. You know, it was just a bunch of ex-cops. You know, it was kind of our retirement jobs, and it changed over the years. Before I left a couple of years ago, um, it was not unusual. And like did I say this? We never had a suicidal ideation, and what that means is somebody who says they're suicidal and actually has expressed a plan for it. Uh, I never had it. I know what you know. If we had one a year, it was unusual. Within I'd say probably 6 7 years, it started changing, and then it got to the point that by the time I was leaving, it was unusual for me to get to work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, walk through the ER, and there not be at least one uh, young person, teenager, dressed up in their blue paper anti-suicide outfit, being watched by a staff member uh, every day. And there would be times I would walk in and there would be three in a row, and I'd deal with those kids, and um, what I saw was when their parents showed up, and you could tell it was the parents because we'd talk to the kids and they'd be, you know, they'd have bad attitudes, but you could tell because the world had the world had essentially thrown them away by not raising them right. And when the parents got there, you saw exactly what the problem was because it was usually the mother that showed up, occasionally a father. Usually the mother showed up and they came in like, yeah. I mean, if your kid was in the hospital with suicidal ideation, would you not go in there and with all the love in your heart and the love of God and praying and saying, "Oh my Lord, honey, what's wrong? We're gonna, I love you more than life itself, and we're gonna take care of it. You tell me we're gonna work on this problem." And there's going to be somebody out there right now saying, "Well, it's not always that easy," and I'm going to tell you, yes, it is. If you start soon enough, it is. And if you haven't started soon enough, then you need to catch up, okay? Because you have disposed of that child. Every kid out there, and I've said this to social workers. I had one almost try to get me fired over this because we were up on a deal. Um, she was up there, and I was there because of a security issue. And she rolled her eyes and said, "Oh my gosh!" She said, "I've got one of these at home." I said, "Oh, really?" She says, "Yeah. If you can tell me how to fix this, I'd be happy." And I said, "Well, it's about parenting." Oh man, did she get hot? She got hot. And I explained to her like I've explained to everybody. Every child born is a perfect child of God. Everyone. And I have never known a kid to screw themselves up. It is always the parents. Right now, this is where people are getting offended. Yeah, I know. You're offended. You're gonna send me some hateful comment about I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, I do know what I'm talking about, and you're speaking out of guilt and the understanding that I'm probably telling you the truth. Okay. Uh, oh, she was hot. But back to the mothers. Usually the mothers would come in and they say, "Oh, my kid's here. You know, they're whatever," and they'd go back in with a and as soon as they go in there, wouldn't you rush to your kid and hug him? No, they'd go in there. They'd be on their phone. They'd be on their phone. They'd go in there and stand and look at their kid, and the kid's in there just kind of sitting there. And after a few words, the mother would go sit in the corner, back in the corner behind the bed where the kid can't even see him, and she's back there for the next 3 hours on her phone, probably talking to her friends about, "Oh, my kid's in the hospital. I didn't need this today. I'm so busy with my job. I'm so busy with this. I'm so busy with that." Well, what you're not busy with is raising your kids. The reason that I put evil in the title of this is that because I know that will draw many people to watch this who need to watch this. Stop with all the so-called evil, okay? I'll tell you where the evil is in this is not in the kid, because kid was screwed up by his parents. That's going to give me some more hate. Well, you can't, you don't know my situation. Not everybody, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I do. It's a human condition. And we didn't used to have this 50 years ago. Why? Because of change in society. And the change of society was brought about by the change of people and the change of parents within the society. Simple as that. And what was I got off onto a sidetrack here. But there is the evil. Just like this sheriff was saying, evil. He blamed it on evil. Stop blaming all these things on evil. Yes, I'll tell you where the evil was. The evil was back. The evil that caused the parents not to raise their kids. That's the evil. The kid is the victim. I don't care how many people out there get pissed off at me for saying that. I don't care. It's the truth, and you are hiding your head in the sand. Okay? The problem with ascribing this to evil is that it allows people and society to dodge the responsibility of raising their kids right. Simple as that. If you can blame it on evil, you can blame it, you remember the old Flip Wilson? The devil made me do it. The devil made me do it. Well, it's your own self-centeredness and your own laziness, your own irresponsibility that is damaged. I'm not saying you, but it is the lack of responsibility and the self-centered. It's the self-absorption on the part of some parents. And it goes across the socioeconomic. Like I say, I've seen it in rich kids, I've seen it in poor kids, I've seen it in country kids, small town kids. It's all over the place. It's just a few. Most parents aren't like that, but the ones that happen like this are. I will always trace it back to the parents. So that's the thing. Stop with all the evil stuff. Stop it, because it allows you and other people to act as if there's nothing that can be done about it, when there is something that can be done about it, and that is people standing up and accepting the responsibility that God gave them as parents, right, and citizens. Simple as that. So get off your evil and get back on to expecting and requiring proper behavior out of adults, which includes proper parenting. I think that's about all I have to say with this. I know that on this, I know that there's a guy, my old partner over at the hospital, watches my videos, and he and I dealt with these things so many times. He never comments, but he's going that's the damn truth. And that is the damn truth. So, when I said yesterday, I pray for the victims down there. I also pray for that young man. What's his name? Colt Gray. Because the problems that caused him, the problems in his mind that caused him to do this, were not planted there by him. They were planted by, whatever. The seed that was planted were the seeds of anger, of rejection, and you can imagine the sadness that a young person would go through to cause them to do something like this. There's evil in the world, but the evil hides beneath that veneer of self-absorption on the part of adults who won't do their jobs. So that's my say. Come on with the hate. And the rest of you, have a good day. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And we don't just prepare for ourselves, but we prepare for our children. I'll say this at the end, too. I'll say this at the end. I always put up on the Patreon channel in the morning a meme or a saying or something like that. I kind of, let's get the day going with the right thoughts. And the one that I put up today was a picture of two statues. It was a picture of a man holding the hand of a little boy, and in the man were a bunch of holes. And it explained, and the boy was made up of a bunch of stone pieces put together, and it said it explained that the statue of the boy was constructed with material taken from the holes in the statue of the man, and that showed that when a parent raises their child, the child is made, is built from the pieces the parent gives them. It was a great day, and Mark Harrison came on and made a statement. He says, man, that is something. And he says, and if the pieces aren't given by the parent, they're going to be given by the world. And that's exactly right. So you all have a good day. Don't accept less from people than they should give. Don't accept less from parents who would rather roll their eyes about the fact that their kids just won't obey or whatever, instead of putting in the work and raise them properly. Y'all have a good day. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.